welcome to the Tabletop Games blog topic discussion. Design styles. Pigeonholing board game designers. Based on a suggestion from the wonderful Bez from Stuff by Bez, I want to look at how designers can sometimes be known for specific styles of board games. That can be useful for people looking for certain types of games, but it also means that the designers can end up being pigeonholed, which can have a negative impact on their professional future in our hobby. It should come as no surprise that we like certain games over others. The reason for liking them can be various. For me, it's a mix of immersive illustrations, clever mechanisms, and a certain level of complexity. In fact, I'm a very visual person, and games draw me in through their visual presentation. Artwork is top of the list for me. So it's no surprise that I learned the names of the illustrators of my favorite games pretty early on. Some artists have a very unique style. You just need to look at the cover art to know who the illustrator is. After a while in the hobby, I realized that there were certain publishers whose games I usually liked. I would keep an eye on their latest releases and more often than not would buy their games with very little research. I trusted the publisher to release certain types of games that appealed to me. Sometimes I was disappointed, but on the whole it worked for me. It's really only in the last couple of years that I worked out the reason why certain publishers' games appealed to me. It's because they were working with the same designer for most of their games. By the way, some publishers would often employ the same illustrator for their games. My favorite example is Red Raven Games. Ryan Lockett designs and illustrates all the games, while also owning the company. So it's no surprise that Red Raven's games feature quite heavily in my and my friends' collections. Anyway, when I realized that it's the designers who are ultimately responsible for whether I liked a game, I focused more on them. So while I still look at the publisher and illustrator for a game, my main focus is on the designer. It goes even further than that. I have learned that certain designers create games that are a good fit for certain groups of people. For example, I can be pretty confident that Matthew Dunstan's games will appeal to me, our neighbors, and my wider family. Many of his games are really simple in their design, with not a lot of rules overhead. Yet they still create a deep enough gaming experience that is suitable to a wide range of tastes. He has released games through many different publishers, often in collaboration with another designer. So whenever I need a game that appeals to pretty much anyone, I look for one of his games. The publisher and illustrator are secondary. I also have to mention Rory Muldoon, who is an amazing board game and graphic designer all at the same time. The games that he and Matthew publish together will appeal to people who like very thematic and engrossing roll and write games. Even the most recent game published on their Postmark Games label fits the bill, even though neither of them designed it. Daniel Newman is another example. While he has designed a wide variety of games, more recently he published amazing and rather different trick-taking games. I literally constantly check what games he has lined up next. I know they're all going to be pretty much instant buys for me. Of course, it's great that I can be confident buying games from certain designers. At the same time, it means I pigeonhole those designers. That can be an issue for a number of reasons. I want to list some of these and would be curious to know from board game designers if any of them apply to them and how much of an issue they are. I think that designer known for making specific types of games can be hugely successful if the games are hit and sell well. The designer might want to lean into these types of games and create more of them to capitalize on their success. I suppose that's a good thing. However, creating the same types of games over and over again also means that the designers might limit themselves. Not pushing boundaries and trying new things can lead to stagnation. I think board game designers like all creative people need to explore their abilities and their imagination. They need to challenge themselves and discover what's possible and learn new things along the way. There's also a risk in simply following the same winning formula. Eventually, people will get bored and the market will become saturated. After all, certain types of games will appeal to certain types of people. Specific games will have a specific audience which remains mostly unchanged. Commercially, that's a risky strategy. At some point, the lucky streak will end. I, as a consumer of board games, love it when a designer releases the same sort of games. I know that when my taste or that of my games group eventually changes, I can find a new designer. It's a lot harder for a designer known for specific types of games to find a new audience. As I mentioned, I would love to hear from board game designers. Do you think you're known for certain types of games? Do you enjoy creating games that follow a certain pattern? Maybe you strive to create lots of different types of games. Or maybe you relish the challenge of making different types of games. Please share your real-life experiences and thoughts on the blog at tabletopgamesblog.com. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for listening to this Tabletop Games Blog topic discussion podcast. Please check the description below for links mentioned in this episode, as well as to the written version of this article on the blog. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, give us some stars or leave a review. Please also tell your friends about me, and if you want to offer financial support, check out my Patreon and Ko-fi pages, links to which you'll find in the blog at tabletopgamesblog.com. So thank you again for listening, and I hope to see you again soon. This podcast was made possible by the generous help of my supporters. Royal Patron Sean Newman, Magic Champion John Risley, Castle Guards David Miller and James Naylor, Dice Masters Alex Bardi, Paul Grogan and Robin Kay, and Shining Lights Jacob Davis, Gavin Jones, Sarah Reed and Richard Simpson.